Alright, so welcome back. In today's video, I want to talk about Pygame constants. Right, so if we go to the documentation, this is the Pygame documentation, pygame.org/docs. This is the documentation. You always want to refer to the documentation when you are building your game or your application using Pygame. So over here we have the locals module. So this is what we want to talk about today. Right, so pygame.locals, Pygame constants. So in this locals module, this module contains various constants used by Pygame. So what is a constant? A constant is just a value that you cannot change. So in Python, the convention is to use all uppercase for a constant value. Simply means you cannot change that value. And so we have access to quite a lot of values that we can use. For instance, in the key module, we have quite a lot of these constants. If we look up in the key module here, you can see all of these are constants. Pygame constant, you can see. So these are access to the keys on the keyboard, and we can only use them. We cannot change these values. We also have plenty of other constants. For instance, in the display module, there are other constants here. Anything that is in all uppercase is a constant. This one, full screen, double buff, all of these, they are constants. And so they are found in a number of modules in Pygame, but you can also access them in the locals. This is where you have access to all of these Pygame constants. So if you want to access any constant, you just have to go to Pygame locals, even though these constants are found in other modules. For instance, in the Pygame display, we have constants. In the event module, we have constants. In the key module, we have constants. In the time module, we have constants, but they can be condensed down to just one module, which is the locals module. The contents of these Pygame.locals are automatically placed in the Pygame module namespace. And so if I'm to go back to what we have been doing here, because we imported Pygame up here, we have been able to use these constants. For instance, this quit is a constant. Okay, it's a value, it's a container of some kind of a value in Pygame, but we cannot change this value. And you will know that this is a constant by its naming convention, all uppercase. We also have this in the key module. The K left, the K right. This is for the left arrow key on our keyboard. This is for the right arrow key on our keyboard. If we want to use these, we can be able to use them without this Pygame prefix that we are putting here. We could just use them as a single name like this. But what we have to do first is we have to import the locals module. Up here we can say from Pygame.locals import ***. It means import everything from the locals module. So this statement, if you go back here, you will see it down here. So from Pygame locals, this is the name of the module that we are dealing with. It's called locals. We want to import everything from there. So once we have that statement, wherever we are using a constant, we no longer need to use the Pygame namespace. For instance, we no longer need to say Pygame.quit. We can directly say quit. We no longer need to say Pygame.kleft. We can directly say kleft. We can directly say k something. So this is applicable only to constants. This is a module. We cannot access it without the Pygame namespace. It's totally different. But for the color, we can. The color is also some kind of a constant. Rect is also some kind of a constant. And so we might not need to say Pygame.something for any constant. We want to try and run this and see if it's going to work. So if I'm to save this and run this, it's still working. Let me try and comment this line out. This one, where we are importing all the constants from the locals module. If I try and comment this, we no longer have direct access to these constants. As you guys can see, it says not defined, not defined, not defined. Because we don't have direct access, we can only access these using the Pygame namespace if we did not import them from the locals module. If I try and save and run this, obviously it's not going to work. Quit is not defined, it says here. But if I uncomment this line and save this and run this, you'll see it's working. Now Pygame recognizes these because we are importing them directly here. So you could use any one of these conventions. It's all up to you. You could decide to use the Pygame namespace, or you could decide to import the locals and use them directly. So I hope it's being helpful. In our next tutorial, we're going to get back to the keyboard input. We're going to try and use the keyboard input to control our pieces. All right, so I want to thank you for your time. See you in our next tutorial. For now, I'm out. Bye-bye.